Welcome to the Clear Cut Chronicles podcast with your hosts, Matt Anderson and Tyler Nicola.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 1 of the Clear Cut Chronicles podcast. Myself and Tyler are back at you here. In this first episode, we just kind of want to break down, I guess, what the Big Woods is in the sense of northern Wisconsin, and then kind of break down habitat types, why we choose to hunt there, lessons that we've learned, either growing up in northern Wisconsin, hunting there, just, some more recent lessons, and then some factors to consider if you're someone that either wants to kind of take up the challenge of the big woods, or maybe you're someone that already lives in one of these areas. Some factors to consider as you're going to go plan hunts in these areas. So
Yeah.
yeah. So first off, Tyler, I guess why don't we go ahead and define what northern Wisconsin really is as far as the big woods. And I think so many people often they say northern Wisconsin or the big woods. Like, if we had to give it like a hard definition, what would you say?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot over the past week. If I needed a true landmark of where northern Wisconsin physically is, and we're going to be saying northern Wisconsin a lot on this show, but it does parallel with the UP in northern Minnesota, just from similar terrain types, similar habitat types, lower deer densities, harder winters. But if I had to give northern Wisconsin like a genuine definition, to me, genuine physical definition, to me, it's Highway 64.
Yeah.
You agree? I'm sure you could say Highway 8, Highway 70. That's getting up there. But I mean, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a fair, like, physical?
Yeah, I think it all kind of depends on where you live in that latitude. Anyways,
Sure.
latitude, longitude. Someone will have to correct me on that. But I've always thought of 64 as kind of like that defined line. Now, if you break down just an absolute like map of Wisconsin, you get over onto the western side of the state, Polk County, can kind of,
I really
you
feel
know,
like it's
kind of angles down a little bit, kind of like going up into Minnesota once you hit Duluth and stuff too. Yeah, but like Washburn, Burnett counties, you get up into Bayfield County, Oneida, Ashland, like all those counties, Lincoln, all the ones that are bordering Lake Superior, and then you get down Marinette, Langlade, all those that are kind of in that northeastern pocket that either border the UP or just like almost kind of bend down as you're getting into the Green Bay area
yeah,
north of that, obviously. So pretty much that whole span of the region, that really that top third of the state, I would say,
right,
kind of, and I guess in our opinions, it kind of truly represents kind of what northern Wisconsin is, and that's something that we'll often be referencing on the show.
right. I
So
mean, I think to break it down farther, I mean, there's certainly areas outside of that relate to what we're talking about, but really it's large wooded areas, of just vast areas that typically have lower deer densities. They don't always, but where it's just tougher areas to hunt that are outside of that typical agriculture land that's for a lot of people more desirable just because simply the deer hunting's better. But for, we've talked about it a lot. It's just there's so many areas and so much public land or private land. That's private land a little bit cheaper in these areas typically too. So a lot of people buy that up, and have their hunt camps in northern Wisconsin. But I mean, how many area like can you tell me how often you run into other hunters, like deer hunters?
in the last 2 years, I have run into, and that was probably like me pushing into like pretty obvious spot.
Sure.
Like once I saw the deer hunter, I was like, the bow hunter, I was like, okay, well that doesn't surprise me necessarily. I've
Yeah.
seen evidence of maybe 2 or 3 other guys that's like relatively active, and I can't even say that both of those stands were recent, but I can't say that they were from bow hunters. They could have been guys just getting ready for rifle season too. So I can't even say like,
Yeah, and I should probably clarify on that. When I ask that, I'm asking like both season, right? Because in gun season, as I said before, there's a lot of people who have hunt camps here. You get down, if you're from Milwaukee or like you, Minneapolis, land is simply more affordable here than anywhere close to
yeah,
those. So you have your cabin here and your more affordable land. You bring your buddies. Yeah, rifle season those obvious spots in rifle season where you look at your Onyx or whatever you have, and you say, wow, that looks like a juicy spot. probably going to be somebody there during the gun season. But yeah, for bow season, I mean, I learned it. I can elaborate on that more too. But this year in particular, I kept thinking that there was obviously going to be somebody hunting that spot. I should probably avoid it. But then when I said, "Oh, I should finally check it out," and yeah, there was no sign of people. So yeah, there's plenty of spots available to hunt in
Yeah.
what I consider northern Wisconsin.
Yeah. And I want to loop back on what you just kind of touched on there too. Talked about like people coming from, and you see this in Minnesota, you see it Wisconsin, you definitely see it in Michigan as well. Those people that are coming from like these more densely populated areas, a lot of times in the southern part of those states, taking the flight north, they're going up to their cabins, whether that's because it was affordable, whether that's because, Grandpa Jim had a cabin there 50 years ago and it stayed in the family and they move, people move away, stuff like that. Speaking on the cabin culture, though, I just feel like it's northern Wisconsin for sure. I can't attest so much as far as the hunting culture goes in Minnesota. I know you got like the lake country and stuff like that is a huge thing, but it just seems like that allure to the cabin. So it's very communal, and so I think that's one thing as far as like northern Wisconsin that I've always enjoyed is and you've hunted other places too. It's not like when you're going out to maybe a prairie state or something like that, you're not getting like, you can maybe tell me if you've seen anything different, but I just don't see like the hunting groups as far as like the cabin and getting in with the bowl of chili, the Packers are on, the radio, or if you have TV and,
Extraordinarily rare. And a lot of it might have to do with like, I'm thinking of North Dakota in particular, like think of North Dakota's rifle season. I haven't been there for the rifle season, but I've met locals and talked about it. You don't get a buck tag every year in North Dakota. You have to draw that tag, and it might take 2, 3, 4, 5. I've heard rumors of it taking up to 7 years. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Very unit depending. But yeah, I think in South Dakota, I know Nebraska like has a limited amount of tags, so it's not like you can count on every year. Billy's got a tag, I got a tag, Jimmy's got a tag, and just get the crew together.
Right.
Wisconsin has that. I know Michigan has that. I know Minnesota can have that, but it's still just it to me. Not to knock on Michigan or Minnesota, but just that hunting culture doesn't seem to be the same. And for those two states, I couldn't tell you why, but yeah, it was with Wisconsin people truly love to hunt.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I know Michigan's got the most, especially bow hunting.
Sure.
I think
Well, maybe
between them and Pennsylvania.
prematurely there, Michigan.
Yeah.
Quite
Yeah. In fact, yeah. So,
just a perception thing, I guess.
yeah. So I don't know. Michigan might even be more, but I know like another thing is like northern Wisconsin. I think a lot of times we're talking pertaining to the rifle season, and Wisconsin's got just that 9-day window too. So a lot of the guys that are working your 9 to 5s, and especially with having Thanksgiving, going over Thanksgiving, you got that day off. It's like, right. So you got a guy that's limited PTO, but he can slide out at work for 3 or 4 days and cover almost the entire rifle season. I mean, I look at our family and that that's what happened a lot of times. We'd hunt opening weekend through maybe one Monday or Tuesday. Guys would go back to work Tuesday or Wednesday, and then they would take Friday off. So you'd have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So a lot of opportunity there too. So I think that kind of helped mold northern Wisconsin. Is a lot of guys were flocking there for either land or originally from there when there was more people in northern Wisconsin with the logging and the industry and stuff. And then you only have 9 days to really gun hunt. I mean, you got muzzleloader following that, but schools in Wisconsin quite literally shut down. I mean, there's a lot of schools districts that'll shut down from.
Yeah, I know the school that is closest to me, at least my buddies. I didn't go to that school. I was close to it, but I'm pretty sure they used to play Escanaba in the Moonlight, that movie, like
yeah
the day before they shut down school.
Yeah.
Which is
My
school didn't do that, but yeah, I know. For me, for example, it was the coaches always made it seem like, oh, if you practice really hard, you can have like a couple days off practice where you didn't need to go to basketball practice because they knew guys were going to be hunting, right? Like that's the call here. So basketball practice is canceled. School, people are, that week of school. I know my school didn't have like take off, but no one's expecting too much. The teachers know like there's going to be a bunch of people thing. It just, that's the culture here.
Yeah, on the intercom, even where I'm from, I mean, on the intercom, I vividly remember the secretary saying, if you're going to be gone next week, just come get your slips. And we'd have these white sheets of paper, and it would just say like which of the days you're going to be gone, or like what classes you were going to miss, so that like there was no like reprimand for it. Like it was just like, yep, half of your class is going to be gone, and that's fine. And to be honest with you, probably the only reason that I was there is because of basketball, like playing basketball growing up. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really kind of what the definition is of northern Wisconsin in a nutshell. I did want to just kind of ask you, or maybe throw it over to you about we talked a little bit about the logging and stuff up in northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, the UP. I mean, long history of people coming to these areas, timbered areas, and logging, kind of industry boom. And now, yeah, I guess why the name Clear Cut Chronicles podcast? Why do we name it this? And
Yeah, Wisconsin has tons of logging, and I mean and that's very significant for a food source for deer. And it doesn't. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that clear cuts are some of your best opportunities, especially hunting like public land or private. I mean, you can have your own land logged. It's just this area. The areas we're talking about typically don't have great soil. So yeah, you can still put food plots in and stuff, but you typically just don't get great agricultural land. Hence the reason there's just a lot less of it. Clear Cut Chronicles is significant, and again, it relates to northern Minnesota, the UP, northern Michigan. There's a lot of logging in those areas, but they just truly are significant for deer hunting. For a gravitational pull in areas you're probably going to find deer.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of the rabbit holes that I've gone down, listening to loggers, listening to foresters, talking to my buddies that are in that, those fields and stuff too. I mean, not just for deer, it's just good habitat diversity. And you layer those different ages of forests together, and you just create good diversity for critters in general. Deer, up in northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, the UP, all that, the woodcock and the grouse, it's great habitat for that. So you got a lot of different habitat for that regeneration. So yeah, I mean, for everyone out there, that's really kind of the reason that we went with the Clear Cut Chronicles. Kind of pays homage to the logging industry that is really kind of brought a lot of people to those areas back when they were starting to kind of get homesteaded, and it also plays nod to, as a bow hunter, the reasons that we love those areas is because that's what holds deer. And in those big, vast areas, you got to find places that the deer are going to naturally concentrate to. So I wanted to, bring that in there because I know on our pilot episode, I don't think we talked about it too much.
No,
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the reason, guys, that we went with that for the show. But I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into maybe why the big woods, and kind of, we already elaborated a lot on it with like the human pressure and stuff like that. But like, why would someone want to go up to these areas?
Yeah,
and hunt them?
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit. I think the big thing is, I mean, whether you have private land or public land or not, but I mean, there's just room. You're always, occasionally it might take a little bit of boots on the ground to find it, but it's hard to imagine every corner of the Chequamegon National Forest being hunted. I'm pretty confident that somebody can find space, whether it's a good spot or not. That's to be decided, but there's always going to be room. For me, it's local. To be 100% completely honest, I probably rather hunt somewhere else a lot of times. Like I'm going to be applying to Iowa. I do these hunting trips. Mainly because the hunting culture has instilled a deep passion for hunting. And I want to go to places where it's easier. Shouldn't always say easier, but I just have, at least from my perspective, it seems like a better possibility to find a mature buck, which is important to me. So yeah, so proximity, it's local. I don't have to take, PTO. It's out my back door. Yeah. I have public land good to me. I don't necessarily hunt close to my home a ton, and I do have a little parcel of land that's big enough to hunt, but I have one stand. I do one little food plot. It's always there, but fortunately for me, I simply monitor it with a cell cam. So if something big showing up, of course I'm gonna go sit behind my house. But it's not a big enough property to really like manage per se. But despite all of that, I said I'd probably rather hunt somewhere else most of the time. It still has that mystical vibe to me. And
Mhm.
that again, we're talking about vast areas. You can always find a spot. Well, a lot of deer get killed, whether it be from wolves or hard winters or the influx of people during rifle season or the drives those people make. But just like there's always room for me, there's always room, even more so, for a buck to get old.
Mhm.
So that and when people do kill them from time to time, these deer are awesome. I mean,
Yeah, they're cool.
you see
Yeah.
just heavy racks. I mean, they're some of the coolest deer out there. Maybe not always from an inches perspective, but like sometimes you just like, that's an old deer. Like that
Yeah.
deer has been hiding in a swamp with moss growing on his horns for years. Like so it's
Yeah.
is that mysticalness for me. So why the big woods? That's it for me. Is like it can kind of something like that could happen. Is it going to happen every
Mhm.
year? Definitely not. Definitely not. It's take a lot of work to consistently find that that caliber buck I'm talking about. But so that there is an allure to it to me. So I don't want to completely sound like, oh, I'd rather travel south or out of state to hunt. I do. I
Yeah.
want to do that a lot, but there's still a special vibe that northern Wisconsin has to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like for me, on the flip side, I think what really did it for me was a couple of years ago, I was sitting in a spot in central Minnesota here, and I was sitting there and I could just see through the trees, farm country type land, small parcels of public, small tracks. And I was sitting there and I could just see the school bus just like driving, and I could just watch it, and then it would stop, and like kid would get off there at that farmhouse, and then it would go down and do it again. And for me in that moment, I was just like, nah, this isn't it for me. I'm not someone that like people love like hunting like, and we need people to hunt in these suburban areas too, because we need to keep the deer densities down. I mean, they can absolutely explode. But for me, I didn't want to see a school bus. I didn't want to hear a lot of cars. I didn't want to hear the highway, stuff like that. Like I mentioned in our pilot episode, like I live around enough people already,
Sure.
living in Minneapolis, um, that I'm willing to travel, a few hours to go or more to go to some of these areas that might not see a ton of deer. I mean, a good weekend for me, if I'm hunting 3, 4 days, if I see 5 or 6 deer, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And so, but for me, it's just quiet. It's like eerily quiet because there's no white noise, there's no light pollution or anything like that. So for me, that's kind of the biggest thing. And then, like you said too, it's just I think the explosion of hunting public land, especially like COVID hit, the hunting public, the hunting beast, like a lot of these channels really blew up. Even meat eater guys like Wired to Hunt and stuff like that, that are really pushing a lot of the public land stuff, which is great. Everyone should go out and do it and experience it and just be happy with the public land our nation has. But I just wanted to explore, and the best place for me to get away from people was in these areas,
Yeah.
and they're heavy expanses of land. So that's kind of why I do it. Low pressure, stuff like that I think really draws. And like you, I'm a meat hunter, but we do a lot of deer drives on my side of the family during rifle season. I'd
Yeah.
say once a year we at least kick up one true swamp donkey. At least, sometimes we get them on the ground, sometimes we don't. But I mean, there's just some, and trail cameras will back it up too. I mean, every year you get a few that walk on camera, and you're like, wow, that's a stud.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to kind of expand this journey to hopefully get in proximity to some of those deer on a more consistent basis.
Yeah. I think you nailed it.
Yeah. So I guess kind of going back to just the experiences that we've had, Tyler, what would you say are like some lessons that you've learned so far from a big wood? We'll kind of narrow it down to like a big woods setting, but also bringing in your other experiences that you've had hunting other states and different parts of Wisconsin.
Sure. I mean, you really, if I had to really sum it up, it's like you have to be patient, and you have to be willing to put yourself through a lot of, I call it pain. And I don't mean pain as it hurts, but just boots on the ground and just the mental battle of, oh, this is not working out, and just the struggles and the grind of I mean, for me, like I said, I always have a goal of trying to find a mature buck, and at times that can be just grueling. But I remember this. I grew up watching my older cousin when I was too young to hunt. We always had you had to be 12 to hunt. I think that was for you too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Actually, I think my younger brother was the first year it stopped.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so it wasn't too far away from us, but we had to be 12. But I remember almost always seeing my side of the family and the drives they make. Almost every year there was a big buck shot. So so growing up, I was anticipating, well, I'm going to get my opportunities at big bucks. And that was kind of that early 2000s era. And then I was old enough to hunt, which I think was kind of one of the worst times for deer hunting in northern Wisconsin, where deer densities are so low. I couldn't tell you, well, we could probably talk about that for a complete episode, the deer management and why that might have been. But I mean, the other lesson I'm trying to get here with that is like always watching my cousins, and then I was totally deflated. I shot my first deer when I was 12, little 6-point buck. Super happy, at the time, obviously, like any kid should be.
right, absolutely.
And there was a lot of time between the next deer I shot, and I kind of not that I was trying to shoot nice deer as a kid, but like I had never seen a nice deer until I don't know exactly how old I was, because I couldn't even look historically at my tags to figure it out, because I didn't kill the deer. But my dad made a one-man push to me, and this deer came flying across the logging trail, and it wasn't a huge buck, but it was like a nice basket rack 8-pointer probably. To me at the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, like a rack,
Huh.
And what I'm trying to get to is like things can happen at any moment, and even from a scouting perspective, is like, this seems like not worth it. And all of a sudden you cut just a giant track. So yeah, the lesson is pretty simple here. Just like a lot of things in life, is just keep at it. And you can find what you're looking for, as long as your standards aren't like crazy high. I'm not expecting to go like a Boone and Crockett caliber deer every year, but yeah, it can happen at any moment. And then, the other lessons I've learned is, I was fortunate from a hunting perspective to move away, as goofy as that sounds, but I moved to Minnesota. But at that time, I spent a ton of time hunting in western Wisconsin. Some of it I would still consider northern Wisconsin. I was kind of right at that,
Yeah.
north and south point where, I could kind of go south and consider it southern, and go a little bit north and consider it northern Wisconsin. But the hunting I did, and all the spots that I gathered, and the sign I was looking for, and everything I learned and figured out over there, which I think I wouldn't say I was amazing at it, but I felt like I was getting to be an okay hunter over there, maybe a pretty good hunter. This stuff doesn't translate. I mean, it's so different over here. And you watch YouTube content like everyone does now, for any subject, and that stuff doesn't translate either. Another reason why, as we've discussed, like this would be a good reason to put a podcast like this together.
Yeah.
So it's just northern Wisconsin is so unique,
Mhm.
from the variety of train types to what works here versus anywhere
Right.
else in the country. So that's my biggest lesson, is you can't Google how to hunt deer and expect to kill deer here.
Yeah.
I can't say, everything's clear cut across the board, but we're northern Wisconsin's huge, right? I mean, there are pockets of big deer and big numbers, and pockets of big agriculture where things might translate a little bit better, but not in the Schwamigan National Forest. You can't Google how to kill deer and go out and expect to do that.
Or the Nicolet, or all these different state forests or public, or county stuff. But yeah, I definitely agree. I will say there are a few channels popping up now that I've seen with some decent consistency. I'm really kind of shedding some light on the northern Wisconsin stuff. That's
Sure.
another thing, guys, too. I think that listeners on here, can expect is we're pretty much right at the same spot that a lot of other people are. And so, or potentially could be. We're not experts on this, and we're going to try and bring on as many people as we can that have had success, and just continue to bring you along listening to those people, and then also how we can blend it all in and move forward hunting these kind of areas. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, some of the biggest lessons I've learned, I've really done it. We've talked, like, I hunted over corn baits and stuff up until I was in college. So just after college. So I seriously have done it for the last 3 years over there. And there's just been some stuff, you know, you look at like the media side of things and the hunting publics and, all these guys that are hunting. A lot of them are hunting, I guess, all over the place, but a lot of the media that I had consumed was public land that was maybe near some bigger metro areas. So you're dealing with a lot more pressure, and then also a lot more like farm country, marshland
Yeah.
stuff that didn't like directly correlate to what I was hunting. And I think I spent the first couple of years trying to hunt away from people, but you can't hunt what's not there either. I think some of the biggest lessons I've learned is like I have enough spots that I've scouted to where if there was someone in an area that I have scouted, I can bounce to plenty other spots
Yeah.
at this point. But I don't go into any of my hunting trips over there now expecting to see people. And
Yeah.
it kind of changes how I hunt a little bit. I'm not necessarily like afraid of hunting by an old logging road anymore. Either, so I mean, in some cases, in fact, all the deer I saw or shot this year were either on an old logging trail or within 100 yards of it.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, so which is wild because you look at that and then it's just like a trail is access, and I mean, it was for me. Um, to some extent, maybe not the whole part of my entry route in, maybe half of it, but that was like something that was big for me too. It's just like, okay, well, this year I just started throwing darts at the dartboard just to throw darts at the dartboard, if that makes sense. I wasn't predicating a lot of my hunting off of what I was hearing on social media. In fact, I've really kind of toned back on a lot of the social media stuff because it doesn't
Ye-
apply, and and you and I have had conversations about this in the past too. Like I get way too in my head about a lot of that stuff. So
Same, man. It can really mix you up. You know, you
and
can you can look at clear sign and be like, well, I can't be here because I'm too close to the trail, and someone else is walking down this in that trail
right,
might have only ever seen you for the past like year or this year.
right, right. So I guess I had 3 or 4 hunts this past fall where I was like, dang, had I not just sat here, I'd have never thought that a deer would have done that. And then it's just logging those memories and writing them down, remembering that stuff. Deer did this time during these conditions, during this time of the fall, and all this stuff. And so the pressure has really been a big thing. I think the access too, and you layer the different times of the year. Because guys, when we're talking these big woods, for someone who I'm kind of speaking to someone who may have not hunted these areas, is especially you get mid-September until maybe the second or third week in October when you really get those good cold snaps.
Yeah.
I mean, it's thick. It's really thick. So I was going into a lot of these hunts a couple of years ago without any pre-scouting, which at least for the time being, I'm not going to do a ton of anymore.
You walk, or is it just a tangled mess of tail?
Right. I mean, 2 years ago, I had a whole setup plan, and I was like, "This is gonna be awesome." A little over a mile from the truck, but I was like, "Oh, I can take this logging road in, cut across the creek, and get up onto this, slight rise, and it was just gonna be great." And it's like I get 400 yards into the walk, and I realized that quote unquote logging road is now sitting over a bog, and I physically couldn't access it.
Yeah.
And given the time of the year, it had about 2 inches of frozen ice, so every time I was punching through, I was making a ton of noise and I was just racking up my shins and I was sweaty and I'll get up. So I've learned a lot. I do access a lot now via some of these logging roads, especially in areas where it is real thick. So your alder patches, I've learned anywhere that the light, can get in. I mean, it's going to get to be a pretty big tangled mess. And the deer know that too. And
Yep.
so I've really been keying in on that as well. If I'm not going to necessarily want to walk through certain things, obviously deer are going to go through some pretty thick stuff, and I've seen them go through some pretty gnarly stuff. But just a leisurely walk, if I have to physically just pull back a bunch of stuff from around me, like a deer, if they can find a way to skirt it, they will, as long as they still feel comfortable. Those two things alone, access and then like just understanding that pressure hasn't isn't is affecting as much as I thought, has really kind of changed the way that I've scouted and then the way that I've hunted as well. And then I don't know about you, but every time I'm in the woods, I try to match what I see on my Onyx with what I'm actually seeing in front of me. So
Yeah,
I've
for
been
sure.
able to kind of, there's subtle changes because like there's a big difference in being able to pinpoint what a ash swamp looks like that's wide open. You can
Yeah.
see for the entire thing because they're just pole trees, and I mean it's easy to see in though. So it's like, oh, okay. So I notice now that the little gray yellow, or excuse me, the green yellow close together clumping. Okay, so that's an ash swamp. So I know when I walk in there this spring, that's going to be wide open. That's going to change deer movement a little bit different. So I've been able to pick up on the difference between some of these habitat types now, and that's really kind of zoned in my scouting for sure. That's another big difference.
Yeah. I need to get
So
better at that for sure.
yeah. So
I had an
yeah,
every time I had a hunt that was just blown up because I thought I could get somewhere, and you
yeah,
just it's like I
yeah.
mean the amount of noise you'd create if you truly got to where you were trying to go would be astronomical, and hunt would be over anyway. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think scouting does get way more important here. You know, I do a lot of in-season scouting,
Mhm.
because, um, not because I don't want to scout in off season. I do, but again, you know, 2 kids that keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing too where we may be similar as of right now is like I'm bound by time because of distance. You're bound because of life, like just the kids and I know you and your wife are going through a lot of different changes this last couple of years, so it's just been bonkers for you. But
Absolutely.
for me, it's like I love to explore, but I also have had to kind of put some guide rails on that where it's like, okay, it's great, but I also have to maximize these weekends in which I get over there to either scout or hunt. So it's like, okay, I finally was in an area long enough last year to understand somewhat how the deer were using the terrain. And I saw enough deer for me to more than enough deer for me to validate going back to it. I feel like I finally found a pocket. So
Right.
when it comes to this year now too, it's like, okay, I'm going to try and add a couple other spots that are maybe in the same area, not too far off that I can hop into, but I'm really going to be start looking more at a granular level of this one specific spot. And it's like, I
Yeah.
have to because I have limited time. And so that's another thing too, is like, I would hunt a spot in the middle of October sometimes and be like, oh, that spot's burnt. And I just felt like that's what a lot of the hunting content, is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
first hit, best hit. And it can, but I mean, I set a spot in which I I shot a small buck and unfortunately didn't recover him this fall. As you probably remember, I shot that spot 2 weeks prior and also had another small buck come through. And I'm like, oh well, my ground sense in here, this is blown for a month, and it's like, no, I mean, it's not. Those big woods deer are they're wary. I mean, they're getting hunted hard by a lot of different critters, including us, but
Right.
they're not. They're also just you know Tony Peterson loves to use the term rabbit with antlers, and I love that. I have to remember that at times.
If I could jump in for a moment, shed a little more light on that, is how much does your typical hunting media now just dog guys for not necessarily dog guys, but it's taboo to hunt the same spot twice or 3 times or just to keep
Especially
sit in the same spot and to continuously hunt that spot and like burn it out per se. But
right,
same time, I know of a couple people who do that and have success doing that, whether it be corn bait or not. But in particular, I know of a guy who, over the past, I think 2 years for sure, possibly 3 years, who's killed giant bucks from a northern Wisconsin perspective, hunting the same spot. I mean, so what does that mean? I
right.
think we get way too wrapped up in me in particular, Dan Infalt. I really like Dan Infalt. Whether it's whether
Absolute killer too.
yeah, I mean, I really really like. I got to meet him. I think it was 2 years ago, and I was kind of starstruck there. But yeah, like Dan Infalt wouldn't do that. So like I'm not going to do that because that's what Dan Infalt
Yeah,
says. But
yeah,
here's a guy that nobody knows in northern Wisconsin. I shouldn't say nobody knows, but like he's not in media
right,
killing awesome bucks doing that.
right, right.
So I mean, this is again going back to northern Wisconsin is unique, and these. If we could probably break this down on another episode, but why is that? Well, I don't think the deer that he's killing are consistently seeing people. So it's not the same, where Dan Infalt is hunting. Yeah, that mature buck he killed has probably seen multiple people multiple times, has learned very quickly that they're danger, where I don't think that's the case. Not always. It certainly happens, I'm sure, but that's not the case a lot of times here. Is I think encounters with humans can be rare for some deer.
Yeah. And I think too, their core ranges can be a little bit bigger if you're talking from like a mature buck standpoint. Core ranges can be a little bit bigger. So even if you did bump them a little bit, you go a quarter mile away, a couple weeks later, especially if you're getting close to that later in October, you're pushing up to the rut. And when he starts getting real interested in those does, I think you can get back on that buck. And again, guys, I mean, this is all things that we're talking about in theory that we have not had enough experience to fact check a lot of this stuff yet.
It's so too, because I mean we're talking about a huge area, so nothing we're saying is like, oh, this is this is a lot,
and not saying what Dan Infalt or the hunting public or anyone, not saying that they're wrong by doing what, but it's just like I think the bigger thing zooming away on it is there's a lot of different ways to do this in a lot of different areas, and you really do truly just need to go out there and screw up a ton until a couple times you're not going to screw up, and maybe you even see a deer. I mean, for me, that's a win when I go over there. Is like, well, okay, so what did that deer tell me? You know what I mean? Well, felt comfortable, may have felt comfortable in this wind, may have felt comfortable. I mean, some of the times I'm seeing, in fact, most of the deer that I saw last year were not in the first or last hour of light. Most of them were either late in the morning or earlier in the evening than I would have thought.
Right.
So there's a lot of ways to break that down now too. But I mean, there's just everyone's experience that everyone that's an expert in a lot of this stuff, they're giving you their perspective based off of them throwing darts at the dartboard and what landed for them. So you and I could have went in and sat the same spot or the same area. We both sat 500 acres. You and I completely did two different strategies. Yours didn't work, mine did. I'm going to see if that works again. You know what I mean? Like, okay, noted. And maybe you don't, but then the next day you try something a little different. Oh, that worked. You know what I mean? So it's like your path to getting to this success is going to be different. And so people can speak on what has been repetitively successful for them.
Right.
I mean, biggest thing would be like scent lock versus not, scent control. You know what I mean? I mean, there's so many people that'll tell you you're nuts if you do, and there's people that'll tell you you're nuts if you don't. There's people that tell you you're nuts to even start hunting before October hits in Wisconsin. Like, why would you hunt the first two weeks of the season? And I can think of two people right now that I've known that have killed studs on public land in northern Wisconsin that swear that the first 2 weeks of the season are probably your best shot at shooting some deer. So you know what I mean?
And then there's the other side of it where you do have those guys who start hunting on Halloween and they hunt those 2 weeks hard. And I know guys who pretty consistently kill nice bucks doing that. And
exactly.
Yes, because now I totally feel obligated to hunt that early season because I'm like, I know this is good. It can be good. I haven't dialed in on being good at that yet, and hopefully. But then it's like, man, I just I could have spent more time with my family, made my wife a little bit happier, and just at those 2 weeks, again, there's a couple ways to skin a cat. Because in reality, what's my ultimate goal? Well, I want to kill a nice buck, a mature buck on opening weekend, and then have the rest of the year to spend with my family. Maybe it doesn't always in that way. Maybe I might go buy the Minnesota tag or an out-of-state hunt. But I want to be efficient with my time because I do love my family. I do want to spend time with them. I do have other things to do. I do want to do this as much as I can because I do love it. You ultimately want to be efficient, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess, Tyler, do we want to get into some other factors to consider before we wrap it up, or should we break this down? I think we'll talk pretty good.
Biggest factor to consider in northern Wisconsin. That's a tough question. If I'm just asked that, I'm like, well, there's less deer. I don't know. Terrain types. You have some sort of transition, and that I feel like big. Wolves. I think we could do a show on wolves. It's not a huge factor to me. I think I personally might have some controversial beliefs when it comes to like the stereotypical like what people in northern Wisconsin think of wolves, which is I want to be clear, like I don't love wolves. but I might have some different beliefs than a lot of people on them.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, just like the factors to consider, like all my factors to consider is just like, well, there's less deer because of this, and I think another factor,
Winter severity, that's a
winter,
big one too.
I mean, that is so huge. I mean, I think over the last couple of years, there's been a slight uptick in deer numbers. I'm not gonna say like massively. Oh, this is
Yeah.
Have all sorts of deer. No, certainly not. But winters are so big. I know where I live in particular. Like I'm right on the edge of the snow belt off Superior.
Yeah.
So I'd certainly have the possibility, which we've got a lot more this year, but those 2 mild winters really helped the deer. And now we're kind of flirting with this could be bad, but if things get a little bit warmer, if the snow settles down, it might be mild. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the winter shakes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I again, another episode we could review this more, but I like to review the winter severity index that the DNR puts out for Wisconsin. Because I don't always hunt my home county. I might actually look at that and be like, well, if I go a little bit east, it was actually a more mild winter, and they stacked 2 mild winters on top of it. So maybe the hunting, maybe my odds of finding a mature buck are a little bit better over there. That's something that I might do. That's a strategy that I have. We could break down my strategies a little more in a future episode, but yeah, I don't know. There's there's a lot of factors to consider, but I mean, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of them. I think one other one to just touch on too is there's still a handful of counties in Wisconsin that allow baiting.
Sure.
And no matter what you feel about baiting, I'm pretty indifferent on it at this point. If it's legal and you can do it, absolutely think it's great. We're gonna probably talk to some hunters that do it and utilize it really well. It's not for me, but I think it's definitely something you have to consider.
Yeah.
I do know I was talking about human pressure, and now the specific spots I hunt primarily 2, sometimes 3 different counties. And all 3 of the counties that I hunt, you can bait
Yeah.
in now again. So, I factored in from if I see a truck, especially I see a truck a couple times in a parking spot, factor that into potentially some sort of baiting. So that's something, you guys might want to consider too, especially if you're really trying to play like a natural movement game.
Yeah.
And other, not even maybe people baiting. Yes, people baiting, but times of the year, I think you get a spike. Maybe that early season, people are going to throw some corn out, see if they can get one opening weekend. Might taper off when there's
Grouse.
the October low, and then all of a sudden people are maybe throwing some more out towards the rut, and then it probably just ramps up even more towards Wisconsin's rifle season, and then maybe a little bit in the late season. But
Yeah,
I think that's
Did you hear me that
I think
about the grouse hunters?
that?
Grouse hunters.
Yeah, and then the grouse. I mean, shoot, that's another thing that I would, I can probably do a whole podcast on. But just long story short, I mean, grouse hunters, I think personally played a huge factor in my hunt last year. And once I was able to kind of work around that and spin that, I try to spin everything into a positive, low deer density. Well, that means I just have to work really hard to find that concentration of deer. Grouse hunters, okay, well, where are the deer going when, they constantly have these dogs running through areas? Okay, let's work on that. So grouse hunter, I mean, the grouse hunting pressure is insane all throughout the fall. I mean, there was times last year, every pullout that I was going to had 2 or 3 grouse hunting trucks there and stuff like that. So it was thick. I was able to kind of use that to my advantage a little bit, and I was able to find some pockets of deer that I think were just kind of staying off the edge of those areas that they were really getting pounded, but still using obviously that terrain.
I want to build that just a touch. Something that I often forget about. We talk about grouse hunters, but bear hunters, and that's usually your first 2 weeks. So then you can find kosher spots with awesome acorn drops. If you do some August scouting and you're like, oh yeah, this is a loaded little patch here with acorns. You want to hunt it? Well, all of a sudden they drop the dogs a mile down the road, and what other animal likes acorns? So bear like them too.
Yeah.
A lot of people argue that deer don't care about hounds. That could be the case. I don't know. You might have to talk to a hound hunter here and see if they're a factor or not. But it's a predator. A dog is a predator. There's a predator in the woods, and there's more humans in the woods. It's got to be a factor. So yeah, there's so many factors. And I know not every zone. Some zones are going to be more heavily hunted for hounds than others, but bear hunters are a factor for deer hunting, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think when you were talking about a nice little acorn crop and stuff too, that was the last factor that I think I have to consider, and I think other people who are either trying to get into this or maybe get into it a little bit deeper as far as northern Wisconsin, bow hunting or even rifle hunting goes. Not all the areas, even though it's a big chunk of area, not all the areas have the same habitat. There's
Right.
some variations in soil types. There's some changes. There's some places that have a little bit of elevation. You get, these 30, 40 foot changes, a little bit harder rolling hills. Some of the stuff I hunt is as flat as a pancake as you can go. And it's almost all lowland stuff. But I mean, some places have more hardwood patches than others. Some are pretty much alder lowland stuff with aspen upland type habitat. I mean, there's some areas I can go and an entire ridgeline is just covered with oaks. And then there's hundreds, thousands of acres in some areas that I might not even find an oak, or it's super isolated, which can be good in certain circumstances. And so I do think that, there's factors to consider there too when you are just looking at northern Wisconsin and saying, okay, where do I want to go? I think looking at onX, looking at the county and state maps and stuff like that give the habitat changes and stuff on there, those are really good resources. Just so you know kind of what you're working with of get a little bit more, like what would potential bedding be, thick areas and stuff like that. This area's got more alder, lowland stuff, or it's got a lot of logging. It might not have a lot of terrain or vegetation changes, but it's this huge alder vastness that they've done different patchwork of logging over the last 20 years. And there's different age structures. So you're hunting almost exclusively one habitat type, but it's all different layers of growth. And so you can kind of play off that. And there's different hard and soft edges and stuff like that with that. So there's a lot to kind of factor in on it. But I can't wait to continue to kind of dive down this road and get going. I mean, as we're recording this right now, it's the beginning of February here in 26. So I know a couple weekends from now, I have one day, I think a Friday, that I'm going to be able to get out and do some scouting before on my way up to the way northern part of Wisconsin, up by Lake Superior. I'm doing some ice fishing with a buddy up at his cabin. So I think I'm going to take the long route up there and I'm going to get one day of scouting in there. And then I got some spare days throughout March and April. I'm gonna sprinkle in.
Yeah,
I mean, it was sunny. I don't know. Was it sunny over by you today? I mean, it was nice over here.
Really nice today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say I'm hoping I can get some scouting into, not to go down this rabbit hole, but for any listeners, I'm recovering from a surgery I had December 10th. So it was on my ankle. So it's all about getting that rebounded here. I know I'm anticipating drawing Iowa tag this year, so I have plans with my buddy Jake, who usually comes with on pretty much all my hunting trips over the last 5 years here, 5+ years. But that's on April 18th is when we have it penciled in to go to Iowa. So hopefully I'm feeling pretty healthy before then. I can get out, and I need to scout. I'm really, really hoping to put some time in because that helps so much. But yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, anything else that on your end, Tyler, before we wrap this one up?
It is I think we discussed quite a few things here, but if anyone has any opinions on it, any questions on it, I really encourage you to reach out to us. And I think, what do you think the best way is right now? It's probably our email address.
Email, and then we're going to get that Facebook rock in here too. Facebook Messenger, Instagram messaging will be good.
Might put your editing skills to the test here, but I don't know if we could, or where we could put it, if we can get it's clearcutcast@gmail.com, right?
Yeah.
Clearcutcast, clearcut.
Yeah. And when all this drops, guys, I'm hoping to get a bunch of these podcasts out to you guys here soon. I'll have the links in the show notes and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah.
All right, Tyler. Well, we will talk to you soon, and hopefully that ankle heals up here, or the heel.
Thanks to the listeners, and good talk, buddy. I'm sure we'll talk again soon here.
All right. We'll see you later, man.
Yeah. Peace out.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the show. This is Clear Cut Chronicles, and we'll catch you on the next one.